The following books, stories, plays, poems, or limericks you will hear on Right Time Radio are the intellectual property of the writers and authors mentioned. Any copying, recording, or reproduction of this work is strictly prohibited without the express written consent of the author. The content of this show is the individual expression of the author and does not necessarily reflect the views of the owner of this radio station.
It's the right time for Right Time Radio. I am not Tom Bruno. I am Lynn Donovan, and it is Girls R Us in the studio today. Carrie is here with me. Hi, Carrie. Thank you. And we have as our narrator, Jennifer Bowers. Hello.
Welcome.
Yes, one of my favorite narrators.
Hello.
We are going to do the continuation, shall we say, of Mary's Christmas Eve. We're doing that today, and the name of it is Mary's Christmas Day. And it's a little long, so we're going to just get right into it, and then when we're done, we're going to interview Jennifer, because she's got some stuff going on at her school,
Yes.
Harrison.
Yep.
Middle, what do you call Harrison?
It's actually Harrison K through 8 school.
Yeah,
now,
that's what
since
they
we
call
go
it.
Kinder through 8.
Yeah. I knew
fine.
that because my grandkids went to school there.
Oh, yeah.
So. All right, so we're going to talk about what she's got going on, and she's got some announcements about local theater type stuff.
Before.
After.
Beautiful.
After. And so we are going to just get right into it. So this is Mary's Christmas Day by Lynn Donovan, narrated by Jennifer Bowers.
Mary's Christmas Day. Passion burned in Chris's eyes as Mary Gibbons rolled over to find him stretched out beside her in the chipped paint iron bed she had slept on that fateful night a year ago. A fire crackled in the open hearth. The cabin was warm in spite of the blizzard howling just outside the door. Propped up on one elbow, Chris had been watching her sleep. "What are you doing?" she giggled nervously. "Watching you sleep." One eyebrow shot up in a flirtatious flicker. "No, I mean, why are you in my bed?" "Don't you mean our bed?" Mary shot up in bed, panting. The desirous passion that burned in her midsection waned as reality of where she was sunk in. She dreamed about Chris Mastis again, and the little cabin. Had he really existed? Did the cabin? Last Christmas Eve, she wrecked along Copper Gulch Road. Then Chris spun out, too. The two of them found the isolated cabin through the storm by a lone lantern glowing in its window. But by morning, Chris was gone. When she reached her fuchsia Volkswagen, the cabin was gone, too. Chris, she thought, had left before she woke. There wasn't a single track where he'd crashed into her VW the night before or when he left that morning. The only proof she had that he ever existed was the note he had left on the table, under a leftover biscuit he had made from scratch with the stuff he had found in the cabin's little kitchen. For a whole year, she had wondered if he was okay. He had told her that he had had 3 months to live and that this was his last Christmas on Earth due to a brain tumor and cancer. He said he was from Grand Junction, but she Googled him and found nothing. Well, not nothing. She found a bazillion Chris, Christopher, Christians, and other variations of Chris. Zillions of Mastis surnames in Colorado. How could she possibly know which one was the man she met last Christmas Eve? Her foolish heart longed for him to this day. The note he wrote was sweet, but without a cell phone number. She knew he had one because he had crashed into her and helped her out of her Carly, her Volkswagen Bug. He had asked if she had any bars. At least, she assumed he had a cell phone. She didn't actually see one in his hand. But he'd asked like he had looked at his and put his hands back in his pockets because he didn't have any signal. Mary shook her head. She was not going to spend this Christmas Day going over all that in her mind. She was home. Nobody knew it yet, unless they looked outside to see her VW parked on the street. Work had kept her later than she had expected yesterday. By the time she was able to drive from Pueblo to Westcliff, everybody was asleep. Quietly, she had slipped into her parents' house and went straight to bed. Her gifts had been stacked on her dresser. The family always opened theirs on Christmas Eve. Then on Christmas Day, they gorged themselves on endless dishes of food that Mom had prepared. Later, her dad and brother watched football while she and her mom went to the movies. It was odd that Mom put her presents in her room rather than leaving them under the tree, but it didn't matter. She would open them after everyone got up. The house was already filled with smells she loved: a turkey roasting, cinnamon rolls baking, and coffee brewing. Her obnoxious brother's truck was in the drive. That was why she parked at the curb. This Christmas was going to be perfect. Wasn't that what Chris had said last year? She thought about that night at the stroke of midnight. He'd said, "See, this is what Christmas is all about. Celebrating nothing more than being alive, dry, and warm. This is perfect." Perfect, she chuckled to herself. They were stranded in a blizzard in a cabin they found by chance or fate, and yet he thought it was perfect. She sighed and tossed back the covers. Mama had probably been up long before dawn. Mary padded into the kitchen. She inhaled deeply. "It smells like Christmas morning. Thank you, Mama." Her mother opened a cabinet door, rifled through the spice containers, pulled open another drawer, lifted glass jars of spices, then looked up. "Where did I put the nutmeg?" Mary reached for a coffee cup, but her mother's frenzied search prevented her from getting one. "I wouldn't know." "Oh, dear." Her mother went back to the first cabinet and pulled red and white rectangle cans down. "I thought I had some, but I didn't buy a new one when I went to the grocery earlier this week," her mother muttered. Mary touched her mother's shoulder. "You want me to go to the store and get some?" Her mom drew in a deep breath. "I don't have time to get it now." Mary inhaled the cinnamon rolls her mom had just set on top of the stove and longed to bite into one. But her mother was in a dither. The least she could do was go get her some nutmeg. Her mother sighed. "Mary." "Yes, Mom?" "I miss you so much." A tear pooled in her mother's eyes.
Oh, we're going to stop right there. Leave you wondering what in the world's going on. And we're going to go to commercials. So we'd like to thank Fremont Regional Hospice for sponsoring the Right Time Radio Show. And let's see what else we have coming up in our commercials. And we'll be back in just a minute with more of Mary's Christmas Day.
The Wet Mountains form the picturesque southern border of Canyon City, but Canadian Mining Exploration Company may change that. Zephyr Minerals has laid claim to 7.5 miles of these mountains and has a permit to explore for gold in full view of Canyon City with the hopes of mining our mountains. Now, they are seeking to triple in size. 3 people, our Fremont County Commissioners, will make the decision on this permit expansion. Tell them that Fremont County cares and ask them to deny this potential destruction of our mountain treasure. Paid for by the Royal Gorge Preservation Project.org.
Do you ever dream about eating an unbelievable, unforgettable meal? One that has everything you love served to you hot and steaming in a one-of-a-kind atmosphere with very fast service? Because in your dream, you're starving and you want something to eat right now. Wake up, silly. You can have all that and more right here in Canyon City at Ortega's Mexican Restaurant, where dreams of wonderful food is served every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Ortega's, where your dreams can come true.
KRLN weather, mostly cloudy and cold today, a 60% chance of snow showers, accumulating around 1 inch. The high today around 34. Cloudy tonight, snow showers likely, but little additional snowfall accumulation. Low tonight near 22. Cloudy and cold tomorrow, 40% chance of light snow with a high near 32. 16 was our low this morning after a high of 52 yesterday. The current temperature at 32 degrees.
Talk Radio 1400, KRLN.
We are back with Right Time Radio, and we're going to hear more of Mary's Christmas Day, narrated by Jennifer Bowers.
"I miss you so much." A tear pooled in her mom's eyes. "Oh, don't start that. I'll go get you some nutmeg." Mary chuckled, but she didn't feel the mirth. Work kept her so busy. She hadn't been to Westcliff as often as she would have liked. And when she did come for visits, her parents always seemed so preoccupied that she ended up spending time alone. Last Christmas, when she finally got to her parents' house, her family gave her such a cold shoulder for not being home Christmas Eve that she hadn't stayed the whole day. She was back home in her Pueblo apartment by dusk. She tried to explain what had happened, but everyone just seemed too busy to listen to her tale. She gathered her purse and knitted scarf, hat and mittens before sliding into her coat. She called out to her family, "I'll be right back." No one answered. Mom was consumed with preparing dishes. Dad and Marcus were watching the pre-game commentaries. Mary shrugged with a giggle and clicked her key fob to start Carly before she went out into the cold. A light snow began to fall and made the morning even more perfect. She stood in her parents' doorway and watched the feather-like flakes float to the ground. White frosted every evergreen bush and bare-limbed tree. The ground still held some heat, melted it right away, as did the driveway and street. But it wouldn't be long before a thin layer of snow would cover it all. Mary hurried to her car. She'd better get that nutmeg and be back before the streets were dangerous. She really wanted that cup of coffee. Maybe she'd pick up a cappuccino while she was out. She drove to the grocery, anticipating it would be closed. Yep, closed. She turned her car around and drove back up Main Street. Surely the gas station would be open. She didn't want to have to drive to Canyon City just for one can of spice. Deja vu gripped her gut. Not with the snow starting. She pulled into the general store, a gas station and convenience store in one. A man in a large flatbed truck was filling up with diesel. Another vehicle, an older Bronco, was parked beside the mock hitching post. Mary pulled in next to it, stepped onto the wood-planked porch. It had an old-time Western feel, with rusty farm implements hanging from the crossbeams and paint-peeled Coca-Cola signs nailed against the wall. Mary'd been in here 1,000 times for a snack or cappuccino, but never spices. The cashier ignored her as Mary crossed the threshold. She'd obviously drawn the short straw designating her to work Christmas morning and exhibited her mood accordingly. "Hey, Becky," Mary tried to be cheerful. "Brr, it's cold out." Becky leaned with her elbows on the counter, chin in her hand. "Mom forgot nutmeg, and apparently Christmas cannot go on without it," Mary giggled. Becky had her eyes set on a nice-looking guy in one of the concession booths. Mary looked over the aisles. Surely spices would be with the food. Yes! She picked up the red and white can of nutmeg. "You have it! Christmas is saved!" Mary lifted her eyes to Becky as she rounded the shelves. The only other customer was the man who held Becky's devoted attention. He drank a hot drink, probably coffee, but he looked miserable. Mary walked over to the concession area, intending to get a cappuccino. She meant only to glance at him, but something about the guy held Mary's gaze. She bent slightly to see his face. "Chris?" she said quietly. The man's head shut up in surprise. He looked directly at Mary, but there was no recognition in his eyes. His gaze dropped to his coffee. Mary moved closer to him. No, she was right. This was the man she'd met last year, the one who essentially saved her life and added a mystery to her life she could not explain. Had he survived the cancer? She looked at his head. There didn't seem to be any huge scars from a massive brain surgery.
Here.
Thank you. I apologize.
Right here.
Aren't you Chris Mastis from Grand Junction, former chef, survivor of cancer? Why'd she say that last part? She drew her lower lip into her mouth and chewed on some dry skin. His eyes rounded. Color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but said nothing, as if he had reconsidered responding to her. His eyes lifted to Becky, then he scooted out of the booth. Mary watched him move to the other side and sit down with his back to the glaringly attentive cashier. He made a small gesture for her to sit. His eyes filled with tears, but none of them fell. "Look," he whispered. "Chris was my twin brother." "What?" Mary slid into the seat across from him. "You're Chris's brother? The alcoholic?" She stiffened. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I'm just so shocked. You look just like him. She winced. Surely he heard that all the time. Why couldn't she shut up? The man shook his head. No, don't worry about it. He held up his travel cup as a salute. Steam swirled with the motion. 12 months sober. Today. So many questions spun in Mary's head. She didn't know where to begin. Was? The man's brow drew together inquisitively. You said Chris was your brother. Did he die? He took a sip of his coffee and set the cup gingerly on the table. He nodded. Mary choked on her tears. She forced herself to utter the words. I'm so sorry. He shrugged. I understand it was quick. Now Mary's tears streamed down her cheeks. What's your name? Surprise lifted his head. He snorted as if to chuckle. I'm Carrie. Carrie Mastis, obviously. He rolled his eyes. Oh, Carrie. She repeated his name, comparing it to his twin's name. Carrie and Chris Mastis. Carrie Mastis. Huh. What? He looked up startled. Oh, I was just thinking how Carrie loses its Christmas appeal. Chris apparently hated it when I made that reference. Yeah, he was pretty sensitive to being teased about that. Oh, I wasn't teasing, she hesitated. Did Carrie know anything about Chris's last Christmas Eve with her in the ghost cabin? He saved my life, essentially. Carrie looked confused, but pleased. He did? Yeah, last year. 1 year ago yesterday. Carrie's eyes widened. Really? Yeah, I spun out on Copper Gulch Road and Carrie spoke over her. He spun out too. Are you Mary? Yes. Like Merry Christmas, they both said at the same time. Mary was shocked. Yes. He told you about me? Well, no. It's complicated. Carrie cleared his throat. So, are you... Am I what? An angel? Mary laughed. No, I'm just an ordinary girl. That cabin, on the other hand, was enchanted, I'm telling you. Yeah, what cabin was that? Mary touched his trembling hand. Was it the tumor? He stared at her. What? Was it the tumor that took him? They sat in silence for a long time. Even Becky busied herself at the cashier counter, but Mary knew she was hanging on every word spoken. So, what brings you to Westcliff? Carrie stared at his coffee cup. I wanted to walk his last path, understand what my brother went through up until the end. I was a louse last year and didn't engage very much. Now I miss him terribly, and I just want to feel like I know what he went through. Mary swiped at another tear that insisted on rolling down her cheek. That's really sweet. Silence settled between them again. Mary looked down at her hand. The nutmeg. Mom was waiting for her to get back. How long had she been gone? She lifted her phone to check the time. Oh, gosh. Listen, what are you doing today? Confusion washed over his face. I don't know. I thought I'd see what this snow was going to do and head out there if it melts off when the sun gets warmer. Out there where? To where he had the accident. Mary startled. She gathered herself and tried to speak calmly. Stay here. Come home with me. Meet my family. Stay for Christmas dinner. There's always plenty. He glared at her for a long while. You just want to prove to yourself Chris was real. She giggled. Guilty as charged. But I really don't want you to be alone. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Day. Unless you really want to be alone. Carrie seemed to consider her offer. I don't know. Oh, come on. It's the least I can do. Your brother changed my life. Carrie looked startled, and then his eyes softened. A smile bowed his lips. He had warm, inviting lips, same as Chris. Identical twins that they were. He truly was a mirror image of the man she had remembered all this time and dreamed about nearly every night. Was it fair to associate her feelings for that guy with this guy? Still, she really wanted her family to meet him. At least Carrie could vouch for her, have a nice Christmas meal, And if the weather warmed up, go out there and have his memorial, whatever he had planned to do with this for his brother. I just don't know if it's a good idea, me just showing up at your parents' place. Are you kidding? She chuckled. They'd love to meet you. She reached across and touched his arm. You are real, aren't you? Yeah, I'm real, he laughed. Here, he took the nutmeg from her. Let me pay for that, and you can show me where your folks live. Well, she hesitated. All right, if it'll make you feel better. He tossed the little can in the air and caught it with one hand. That's it. It'll make me feel better. All right, then. She stepped back and let him walk up to the counter. She'd really wanted a cappuccino, but didn't dare mention it for the fear he'd insist on paying for that, too. Becky smiled at him like she wanted to ask him out on a date. Will that be all? Sure. He glanced over his shoulder at Mary. She nodded. He turned back to Becky. That's it. She rang him up and gave him the spice can and receipt. So, I get off at 3 if you need anybody to hang out with. Becky! The heat of embarrassment filled Mary's face. Stop that! The cashier leaned across the counter to whisper to him. I don't care what's going on. I'm into crazy. She smiled and peeked an eyebrow. Carrie smiled back at her. Maybe another time, okay? She looked disappointed. Sure. Mary squeezed her eyes closed with embarrassment. She's teasing. Please ignore her. Then she glared at her high school friend. What had gotten into her? Flirting with the guy Mary was obviously taking home to meet her parents? She turned to find Carrie walking out the door. Another wave of heat washed over her cheeks. She hurried to catch up with him. We're just down the way. You want to follow me? Sure. He held the door for her to exit and then gestured for her to get into her VW. You know, it's weird to see this bug. I mean, I've heard about it, but couldn't imagine that color, he said quickly. I understand you have a girly name for it, like Carsile or Carly, am I right? Yet another wave of heat filled her face. She nodded. Yeah. It was amazing how much he knew about her. Yet he acted like he and Chris didn't talk much about that night. She shook her head and started Carly's engine. Man, were Mom and Dad, and especially her brother Marcus, going to be surprised. She lifted her phone while Carly's engine warmed and texted her mom, on my way with nutmeg and a surprise guest. She put Carly in gear and pulled away from the station. The Bronco filled her rearview mirror, but stayed a few car lengths behind. The roads weren't icy, but one never knows. She appreciated his caution. Her mom didn't text back. Mary glanced at the screen. Nothing. She grinned to herself. She was probably busy mixing side dishes and ignoring her phone. Just you wait and see, Mom. You're gonna love this surprise.
All right, we're going to take another break. This is Right Time Radio. We'll be back with more of Mary's Christmas Day after these commercials.
Tell me if this sounds about right. When your furniture wears out or breaks, you replace your furniture. So you don't go furniture shopping until you need to.
But that's not how most people shop at Classic Furniture. Most people come in to see what we have all the time. Our inventory changes daily. And then when they find that perfect piece, that piece they didn't even know they were looking for, they move things around in their home and make room for that new furniture.
I guess that's one way to shop for furniture.
However you shop for furniture, shop Classic Furniture, 510 Main.
Canyon City.
From the days of the prophet Jeremiah to our own, some things haven't changed all that much. There's still corruption, violence, injustice, tragedy, and suffering. That's the bad news. However, the word of the Lord endures forever. So does God's love for us in Jesus Christ, and that's the good news. This week on The Lutheran Hour.
The Lutheran Hour is brought to you by St. John's Lutheran Church in Canyon City. Listen Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. here on 1400 KRLN. Do you own a small business in Fremont County? City Auto Plaza's Business Link and on-the-job programs are the right move for the road ahead. Get the royal treatment on your next Ram truck or ProMaster with huge discounts and allowances. Let the royal treatment continue with amazing service and parts perks. First in line every time, special labor and parts rates, plus extended service hours, just to name a few. Best of all, it's free to sign up. Call City Auto Plaza today at 275-2329.
Hey, we are back with Right Time Radio, and we're going to hear some more of Mary's Christmas Day, narrated by the wonderful Jennifer Bowers. I love the way you read, by the way, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Just to
as long as I don't
know.
lose my spot.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a paper mix-up on that one. Nah, you know it all. Everything works out for the way it should, right?
Yes.
It was just a big pause. Anyway, more with Mary's Christmas Day.
Carrie parked behind Mary's bug. He stayed in his Bronco staring at the house. He looked concerned, as if he thought this wasn't a good idea, and he knew it. Mary patted the window, drawing his attention. Come on. He pulled his door handle and stood beside his truck. Mary, I don't know about this. It's no big deal, really. I'm just offering you a nice Christmas dinner and company when you go back to the crash site. Besides, I'd like to check the thing out, too. I've wondered all year if there was any sign of that cabin. That cabin? Sure. Carrie seemed agitated. You still want to go, right? Mary led him to her parents' front door. She turned the doorknob, but Carrie grabbed her shoulder. You better let me. He touched the doorbell. Her mother opened the door, wiping her hands on a towel. Yes, may I help you? Mom, this is... Carrie stepped in front of her. Mrs. Gibbons, I'm Carrie Mastis. Chris Mastis was my twin. Oh, Carrie, please come in. Her mother stood back to let him in. I'm Martha Gibbons, but I guess you know that. She giggled. Mary entered behind Carrie. I got you the nutmeg, Mom. Yeah, Mrs. Gibbons, my mama taught me to always bring a gift. This may sound stupid, but I brought you some nutmeg, he chuckled. Oh my gosh, that's so strange. I needed nutmeg. Mary stood back and stared at her mom. Yeah, I told you I'd go get the nutmeg. She glared at Carrie and shook her head. He grinned and winked. Was this some sort of game he was playing, claiming it was his idea, not hers? Come in and meet my husband and son, Mary's mom said, leading him into the living room. Matthew, look who's here. She stepped in front of the TV to get his attention. Huh? Her father stood and shook Carrie's hand. Marcus stood too. It's great to meet you, man. Likewise, Carrie responded, and glanced at Mary. She smiled, proud to have him meet her folks. Sit, Mom insisted. Dinner will be ready in about an hour. You will stay to eat. Mary nodded vigorously. That's why I invited him, Mom. I'd be happy to. Carrie folded down on the couch. Mary sat beside him. My dad and brother live and breathe for football. Don't you, Dad? He ignored her as always, completely engrossed in the commentary. My point exactly. She flopped back on the couch and giggled. Carrie smiled. 5 former football heroes debated which team had an advantage and who had been drafted in with the hopes of winning the Super Bowl. Soon, her mom called them to the table. Carrie rose and let Mary walk ahead of him. She stood behind her chair and waited for everyone to get to the table, too. She gripped the backrest, as did her family, and bowed her head. Her father said a blessing, and everyone pulled their chair out to sit. As you can see, Mary's mom said, we always lay an extra place setting. Carrie flashed a quick glance at Mary and nodded. Actually, I do understand. I don't, Mary said. Why would you set an extra plate? In case a stranger shows up at your door on Christmas Day? What are you talking about, Mom? Yes, I suppose you would understand. Sympathy flashed in her mom's eyes. Mary considered her mother's comment. Perhaps she was just trying to be kind, since Carrie's lost his brother. Otherwise, she had no idea what she was talking about. Now that she thought about it, her mom had been really acting strange today. So preoccupied. Mary had told Carrie that after dinner, she'd go with him to the place where she had spun out last year. After they did that, she hoped she could get her mom to slow down long enough to go to the movies with her. It was their tradition, after all. The little theater always had a new release Christmas Day. Today should be no exception. Her father sliced the turkey. Everybody held out their plates in turn for him to give them some. Carrie lifted Mary's plate and held it out to her dad. Dad smiled at him endearingly and put a small piece of white meat on her plate. Carrie sat the plate back in front of her. She smiled at him politely. Why all this chivalry? Mom started the side dishes by passing to Carrie first. After all, he was their guest. He dished himself a spoonful and then put a spoonful on her plate and handed the bowl to Marcus. The whole family seemed impressed with his intention to her. She, on the other hand, was annoyed by it. She frowned at him as he scooped a dressing and then poured gravy over it. She actually hated giblet gravy and always let it be passed on down the table. You know, I can do this, she finally spoke up. He grinned and nodded, but continued to put a scoop on her plate as the bowls came around. Soon, her plate was filled to the rim, and the bowls settled in the center of the table. Everyone tucked into their feast, except her. Carrie's over-the-top exhibition of whatever that was had made her too angry to eat. She shoved her chair back. May I speak to you? He looked at her father and swallowed the food in his mouth. May I be excused? Of course, dear, her mother answered for her husband. Mary marched down the hall to her bedroom and waited for him to enter. She shut the door gently and turned vehemently toward him. What do you think you're doing? I'm not an invalid. I know you're not. He looked around her room, his eyes landing on her unopened presents stacked neatly on her dresser. Every surface was dusted. Her bed was nicely made. Pillows and stuffed animals were meticulously arranged on the quilt. The room was very her. He turned his eyes to hers. So what was all that out there? He shrugged. It just seemed like the thing to do. She considered that. Well, don't. Sadness filled his eyes. Her rudeness permeated her heart with regret. Listen, I promised I'd take you to the site where Chris and I crashed last year. Let's just go do that, and you can be on your way. Carrie might appear to be identical to his twin, but personality-wise, he was very different. Strange, even. Any fantasy she might have entertained about hooking up with the doppelganger of the man she had dreamed about all year faded quickly the longer she was around him. She led the way back to the dining room. Listen, Mom, Dad, Carrie spoke over her. I'm really sorry, but I've got to be going. Her mom leapt to her feet, as did her dad. Oh, of course, son. Her dad looked concerned. Marcus ignored the whole thing and continued to eat. Little got between her brother and his food. She sighed and flashed an apologetic expression toward her mom. She'd explain everything later. Save my plate. I'm going to go take care of something, and I'll be back in an hour or so. Her mother insisted Carrie let her make him a plate to go. She slid everything from his china plate onto a styrofoam one and wrapped it in 2 layers of foil. Her parents hugged Carrie and shook his hand. Mary wrapped up in her knitted accessories and slid on her coat, tapping her key fob to get Carly started so it'd be warm when she climbed in. Are you ready? Yes. He glanced at her and thanked her parents again. I suppose I need to lead the way? Sure, he answered, and trod through the accumulating snow to his Bronco. I'll follow you. Mary gritted her teeth. Regret filled her gut. Why had she agreed to take this perfect stranger out into the country just to see a turn in the road where she had spun out in a blizzard 1 year ago? She climbed into her bug and pushed the transmission into first gear. Pulling away from the curb, she looked in her rearview mirror. He was close behind, just like when they had come to their folks' house from the general store. She turned on Highway 69 and pressed the gas. The streets were still clear, and going at the speed limit was not a danger. She switched to second and then third. Soon, she sped along in 4th gear. The crash site infiltrated her thoughts, making her tense. She clicked on the radio and relaxed as Perry Como crooned Christmas songs through Carly's speakers. Turning onto Culper Gulch Road, a sense of foreboding tightened her tummy. Was it the road or the larger snowflakes that began to fall? The higher in altitude she drove, the heavier the snow fell. Lack of traffic allowed the white flakes to accumulate. She and Carrie were the only tracks being laid as she passed through a low water crossing. The next one would be where she would pull over and show him around. Carrie slipped as Mary made an S-curve at an inappropriate speed. She gently tapped on her brakes and downshifted to third. A VW wasn't the best car to drive when there was ice under snow. Having had that wreck last year made her leery of snow and ice anyway. Her nerves prickled as she slowly released her clutch to help slow her car down without braking. Near the spot where it all happened last year, she eased Carly around the curve, rumbled over a cattle guard, and dipped into the low water crossing. The memorable spot was on her left. She downshifted to second and prepared to pull over. Carly fishtailed. No, not again.
All right, we are going to stop there. I love cliffhangers, in case you can't tell. All right, after these commercials, we'll come back for the finale of Mary's Christmas Day.
This is Dean from Brady's Garden and Spa, your local garden guy for all things garden. Brady's carries everything for garden, including trees, shrubs, perennial flowers, fountains, statuaries, and pond supplies. Brady's also has a large selection of houseplants, fertilizers, pottery, and quality potting soils. Local problems, local solutions. Don't forget, we also carry quality hot tubs from American Whirlpool and a complete line of water care products from Leisure Time. Don't forget to tune in to 1400 Carol N this Thursday at 9 a.m. for the Garden Guy Garden Show with Dean Brady.
Roll Gorge Radio's AM 1400 KRLN and Star Country 104.5 FM. And we, along with Fremont and Royal Gorge area businesses, proudly present our Customer Appreciation Day we call Money Day.
Hey, y'all, this is Chelsea Lynn inviting you to join me every Tuesday afternoon at 2:30 for your chance to win your share of free money.
That's right, a little cold hard cash could be yours. To win, simply be registered and present at one of these Money Day store locations.
Coyote Coffee Den in the Medical Building location, 1338 Fay Avenue, Building D. Dryden's, appliances, mattresses, and furniture, 1001 Main Street, Canyon City. And the Trading Corner, 700 Shoup Drive, Florence.
So visit a Money Day store location, pick up a registration card, fill it out, and get it back to Royal Gorge Radio. Or go online at RoyalGorgeRadio.com to find out more. Then every Tuesday afternoon at 2:30, be at a Money Day store location. Listen for your name, hear your name, and call 276-0331 within 60 seconds to claim your cash. From Fremont County and Royal Gorge area businesses, AM 1400 KRLN and Star Country 104.5.
KRLN weather, mostly cloudy and cold today. 60% chance of snow showers accumulating around 1 inch. High today near 34. Cloudy tonight, snow showers likely, but little additional accumulation. Tonight's low near 22. Cloudy and cold tomorrow, 40% chance of light snow. Tomorrow's high around 32. Yesterday's high 52 with a low this morning of 16. The weather station now recording 36 degrees.
Talk Radio 1400 KRLN.
We are back with more of Right Time Radio. And once again, I want to thank Fremont Regional Hospice for being our sponsor and letting us be on the air. We so appreciate you guys. So now we're going to read the conclusion of Mary's Christmas Day, narrated by Jennifer Bowers.
Carly fishtailed. No, not again. She turned her steering wheel into the spin, regaining control. But then Carly over-adjusted and spun the opposite direction. This time, a full 360. Mary gripped her steering wheel with white knuckles until her VW slammed to a halt against the snowbank. She let out her breath. Thank goodness Carrie was behind her. He ran up to her car just as she shoved her shoulder into the door to force it open. You all right? Yeah, she panted. Just shook up. I don't know why that happens to me every time I come this way. Long as you're okay. He put out his hand to help her walk away from her car. She placed her gloved hand into his. 2 crosses were flocked in snow back from the road. A Christmas wreath hung on each. The snow gave it a pretty festive feel, if it weren't a symbol of a lost loved one. Her heart sunk with sorrow for the family who had marked this very same spot. Looks like I'm not the only one who lost it here. A shiver rippled down her spine. She lifted her eyes to where the lone lantern had led her and Chris to the little cabin. All she could see today were snow-covered ponderosa pines and cedars. You want to walk out there? Where? Carrie followed her gaze. Mary shrugged. I just wonder if there's any sign of that cabin where Chris and I spent the night. You know, a foundation or something. Oh, that. Carrie clenched his jaw. Sure, let's take a look. He led the way, and Mary high-stepped through the snow to catch up with him. After a few yards, she looked around. It should be about here. He walked back and forth, perusing the ground. Hang on. She looked up. You see something? Yeah, maybe. He kicked a large stone. Mary jogged to him and followed the snow-covered lump, exposing the rock by pushing the snow off with her boot. She followed it for a short way, then turned with the 90-degree turn of the rock. Look, I think this is a foundation. She found a large rectangle. This must be the hearth. She remembered the warm fire she had made. A rusty cast-iron pot lay on its side inside the rectangle. Could this be the Dutch oven Chris had cooked the biscuits in? Tears filled her eyes. I swear there was a fully standing cabin last year. I think this is this pot that he cooked in. She lifted her eyes to Carrie. This is so weird. You've got that right. A car swooshed down the road. They both turned to watch it go by. Mary looked up at the murky, light gray clouds. It's really coming down. I guess I better get back home. Carrie looked deeply into Mary's eyes. His gaze held her in place. It was nice meeting you, Mary. She considered his odd and sudden affection. Likewise. He put out his hand and she took it. Silently, they trudged through the snow back toward the road. The wreaths on the two crosses were completely covered in snow now. Something about them drew her attention. She let go of Carrie's hand. He seemed to stiffen as she went to brush away the icy covering. Perhaps he was superstitious about touching a roadside marker. She shrugged and squatted to read the name. The snowflakes fell thicker, making it hard to read the painted letters on the white wooden cross. She squinted and continued to brush away the obscuring flakes. Then she saw it. She gasped and leapt to her feet. Stumbling backwards, she fell back from the memorial. Carrie didn't move. He stayed where he was, watching her reaction. You? She spun around looking for her car. It was gone. Only Carrie's Bronco was parked along the side of the road. She spun toward the treed meadow. The cabin stood in the distance. A lantern glowed in the window, and smoke rose from the chimney. The front door opened, and Chris stepped out onto the porch. Carrie waved to his brother. Chris smiled and waved back. Mary waved absently, confused. She turned back to Carrie. I don't understand. He pressed his lips into a half grin. Yeah, you do. Her eyes dropped to the ground and darted all over the snow-covered winter grass and bushes. She looked up at Chris, still standing on the cabin's porch as if he were waiting for her. Her gaze met Carrie's. We died? He nodded. So much sadness filled his face. But how? She stepped toward him. Are you dead too? He lifted his hand to rub the back of his neck. No, he sighed heavily. But it seems when my twin died, I suddenly developed this gift. It's why I went sober. Cold turkey. I haven't had a drop of alcohol since. Mary stared at him, absorbing his words. She turned to look at the marker. Her marker. The other one was for Chris. You did this? No. It was your parents. They contacted us and told us they were doing it, though. That's why they knew my name when I came to their door today. She pressed her face towards his. Today, I was at their house. They weren't ignoring me. They didn't know I was there. He nodded. That's why you put the food on my plate? He nodded again. She turned to see Chris, still waiting at the cabin. I'm dead? I'm afraid so. And Chris is waiting for me? Looks like it. She whipped her head around to look at Carrie. You brought me here for this reason? He shrugged. That I don't know, but it does make sense. She turned to look at Chris again. Yeah, I think it does. She took a step, then turned back to Carrie. Thank you. And tell Mom and Dad I'm all right. He nodded. She nodded also and high-stepped through the snow to where Chris stood patiently. He put out his hand and she took it. His arm was warm when he wrapped it around her shoulder. He kissed her passionately. Together, they walked into the warm glow of the cabin. Carrie grinned a sardonic smile as the cabin faded from view and the smoke fizzled with the falling snow. He climbed into his Bronco and started the engine, lifting his eyes one more time to the empty field. He swallowed hard. Merry Christmas, you two. The end. Or is it?
That was great. Did you like that?
I do. I love these stories.
Yeah, thank you. I love a good ghost story. And when I was challenged to write a Christmas story, it turned into a ghost story.
It's a good one. I like it a lot.
Thank you. Well, I have to tell the audience.
No, they're funny
this
story.
fun thing that we went through. Jennifer's not from around here.
I'm from a little Berks County town in Pennsylvania.
Which is a very lovely place to live.
It is. It's gorgeous. It's very old. Colonial homes still stand. And the whole family's there from grandma to fourth cousins.
Oh,
so
how
that's,
fun.
Everyone's there.
That is fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, she and I encountered a word in this document that we say differently. Tell us what that word is, Jennifer.
It's giblet.
And how do you say it?
It's giblet. Giblet gravy. Giblet with a G, a G.
Okay.
And then everyone here is telling me, no.
It's
giblet.
Giblet, yeah, the J sound.
Like, I'm Pennsylvania Dutch. It's giblet.
We even had Anna Lee Google it for us because we were like, well, which one of us is right? Because I'm from Texas and we do say things
And
differently.
then my whole thing was, I just want to make sure I say it right for the Colorado
For the
people. How do they
Colorado,
say it
so
here?
they understood. It was fun, though, us trying to figure out how that was said.
But I love that took 10 minutes to figure out how to pronounce giblet gravy.
How do you say it, Carrie?
Giblet.
You do say giblet. Yeah, that's what I don't like giblet gravy either, by the way.
No, we're talking about we don't like it.
I don't do innards. I really don't.
No, regular turkey gravy from just the frying pan, but
That's the way I do it. I will add the boiled eggs like you do in a giblet gravy, but I don't put
I don't do that.
the innards in it. Blah.
Nope.
But other people love it. So.
That's too funny.
Well, Jennifer, tell us. Okay, you're a teacher at Harrison, K through 8, and you are also, besides a teacher, 4th grade, correct?
Yes, I teach 4th grade.
God love you. You're also the drama director.
Yes,
at the school.
The art teacher and I, Miss Susan Cooper. We are both the directors for Harrison. I've been doing it's my 3rd year now.
That's right.
It's been so much fun. We did Annie my first year, and then we did Alice at Wonderland, an updated version of Alice last year.
Yeah, Alice
And-
couldn't get her phone charged.
and she had to find a Starbucks in Wonderland.
did. Oh, my.
It was actually really funny.
It
My
was
kids
fun.
did great.
I attended. It was wonderful.
Well, this
So what have
year's
y'all got going on this year?
This year's show is hysterical.
Okay.
It's called The Fearsome Pirate Frank.
Okay.
It is a pirate show, and I blatantly, it is blatantly in your face, a pirate show. Very funny. Like, to the point where we even have narrators that come out to tell you you're here to see a pirate show.
Okay, cool.
But we're going to be doing that. We actually are doing 2 weekends this year. I'm so
nice.
excited.
Okay.
January 31st at 5 p.m.
Okay.
Saturday, February 1st at 2 p.m. Friday, February 7th at 5 p.m. And Saturday, February 8th at 2 p.m.
Okay. And what does
So-
it cost to get in?
$5.
That is
That's
cheap.
a deal.
That
I'm
is a
telling you.
deal. And it's at Harrison.
It's at Harrison K through 8, and if there's any Canyon City School District children that come and show their ID badge, they get $1 off their ticket
Nice.
price.
Okay.
And of course, kids that are not in school under the age of 5 are free. We will not charge
cool.
them. We will be selling. Okay, we're selling concessions, but it has to do with the show, so there will
Okay.
be food and drinks. We're selling Pirates Booty popcorn.
That's what I was going to ask. What do you mean it has
Yeah.
to do with the show?
It's funny. There's a whole joke in the show about ho-hos, the chocolate cream. So we're going to sell those
neat.
as snacks. But it's quite funny. My kids have been working really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to be doing that.
Cool.
I'm excited. It's our show.
I'm excited for you. That is awesome.
My kids are super excited. They love that we're doing pirate show. Although after teaching the kids how to talk like a pirate. I thought for sure I was going to be fired because some of the tongue twisters went into wrong words, and I had to explain you can't do that.
Oops, don't do that. Yeah, I hear you. Especially for fourth graders. Well, now your cast is not just the fourth graders, though.
No, it is fifth through eighth graders,
Okay.
and they do the set, the costumes, the props, the lighting, the sound. It's a kid show. I am there to facilitate and to make sure it's done properly.
Yeah, a couple of your kids have been on Right Time Radio.
Yeah, Emma, Eason,
yeah.
And they've been in local theater. My kiddos have all auditioned for local theaters, Fremont Civic Theater, Rialto Theater, and all of that.
Well, speaking of local theater, you've got some story or announcement to make about that.
Yes, Rialto Theater. We are paving the way for the future of the Rialto Theater. We've got some new people in charge. Myself, one of them for the Rialto Players. I'm now on the FACT board for the Rialto Theater. Not in like an officer position, but just there to help out. And we would like to invite anyone in the community and the public that would like to be involved in theater, acting, set, props, lighting, whatever it is you want to do, please come out. We are having a Rialto Players meeting tomorrow, Saturday, at 1 p.m. at the Rialto, and we're just inviting the community to come on out, see what we're about, and see the future of the theater.
And in case somebody's lived under a rock and doesn't know where the Rialto Theater is, where is it?
It is on Main Street in Florence. You cannot miss it. It is the historic rialtotheater.org is
Restoration
the website.
ongoing.
Yep. Oh, yes. And that's
it's turning out beautiful.
It is turning out beautiful.
Pushing for all of the restoration to get completed and new shows, and we've got such a lineup this year, and we're hoping to work with the other theaters in the community and have our theater used for their production. I mean, there's so many great things we're doing.
Yeah,
yes. So come on out if you would like to be part of the theater.
So excited.
1 p.m. tomorrow at the Rialto Theater in Florence.
I think I'll be there.
Yes.
Okay, well, the other thing I want to tell everybody is next Friday, Tom Bruno will be back from out of town. He's gone to a wedding back home. But he'll be back and I'll be back. And we actually are the featured authors at the Kaleidoscope. It's their first Friday thing that they do. It's so cool. And he and I are going to be their featured author of the month. And so we will have a signing of books at the Kaleidoscope. That's at 602 Main. Downtown Canyon City. And then because we are the featured authors at the Kaleidoscope, we are also the featured authors on the Right Time Radio, because that's what we do in conjunction with the Kaleidoscope. So, we have an ongoing series that he and I are both working on, and then I have stuff I'm doing separate. We do. We have 4 books have been published. They are available on Amazon. Speaking of which, Mary's Christmas Eve and Mary's Christmas Day is also available on Amazon, and it's only 99 cents each. So they're
and you get more
available.
Details.
Yeah, and so you can pull them out and read them to other people. But anyway, but Beyond the Veil, first 4 books are available. It's Tom's book, Entangled with the Shade, my book, Entangled with Fairies, and Travis Perry's book, Entangled with the Fawn. Those are all out, available on Amazon. They're $2.99 each. So what we're hoping to do, if we can get everybody together, is we're going to have them call in. We tried this before, and some people got a conflict in their schedule, but hopefully we can do it next Friday. We're going to have our authors call in, read some excerpts from the first 3 books, and just kind of see how it goes, and just share that Beyond the Veil. And then at the Kaleidoscope at 7 o'clock? 5. See, I don't even know, and I got to be there. At 5 o'clock, Tom and I will be available to sign books that we have, because I have other books too that I have in paperback, and then he has that big one that he wrote. I can't even think of the name of it right now. He'd kill me for that. Yep, can't think of it. Anyway, we'll let you know next week. Yeah. So join in on the show next week, because you'll get to hear that and our other authors. They're from various different places in the United States. And that's all I've got for today. So thank you for tuning in to Right Time Radio on KRLN 1400.
Delicious food, great times. Pizza Madness, 509 Main Street, Canyon City. This is 1400 AM, KRLN, Canyon City, Victor.